If you look historically at what some people have said about gratitude, there's been some very powerful things that have been said about it. For example, it's been referred to as the secret to life. That's pretty good, right? If something's the secret to life, you want to know what that was, right? The key that opens all doors. Somebody referred to gratitude as that. Someone else referred to it as the most passionate, transformative force in the cosmos. Right, that's pretty cool, right? And so on. Someone else said it's the queen of all the virtues, the greatest of the virtues it's been referred to as. But I think it was this person who said it the best. Ben Stein, he's not too far from here, I think, in Beverly Hills he hangs out. Anyway, very famous for his views on the economy, politics. He's been an actor. He's dabbled in a lot of different domains. But he also has some knowledge in the field of finance and investments. And so people would often ask him, at least they did before the economic disaster in the late part of the last decade, Ben, how can I get rich quick? I have some money, I want to invest it. What's the best way to invest it? To which he would reply, I can't tell you anything in a few minutes that will tell you how to be rich, but I can tell you how to feel rich, which is far better than being rich. He says, be grateful. It's the only totally reliable get-rich-quick scheme. He says that gratitude is riches. Beyond that, he also says that gratitude is tax-free. Well, that's just good too, right? So that's even better, right? So we'll start here, following the voices of others who have said similar things about the nature, the power, and the potential of gratitude. What I've come to the conclusion after roughly 15 years of study and doing research and seeing the results of other scientists also conducting research on gratitude is this conclusion. This has kind of become my, mantra, I guess, about what gratitude does. That gratitude has the power to heal, to energize, and change lives. And that's a significant claim to make. I wouldn't make that lightly. Being a scientist, I'd want to see all the evidence, and it's there, and I'll review a little bit with you here tonight. It does appear to have the ability to do all these things, that it does have the potential, it does deliver on what it promises to deliver. A little bit more succinctly stated, or pithily stated, is that gratitude works. All right, and that's why I entitled my new book, Gratitude Works, because it does these things, and it does more. So I want to first just a little bit overview of some of the findings, but then I want to really talk about some new ideas I've been working on that I think take this topic in a new direction, really change the nature a little bit of how we think about gratitude. First of all, as a scientist, and I know there's philosophers in the room, and you guys, you like to define things, right? And so forth, and figure out what they're all about. And so I always begin with a definition of gratitude. And then when we get the definition out of the way, it gets more fun. It's easier after that. But we got to start here. So when we're grateful, think for a moment about what it means to feel gratitude, towards someone or for something you received. You're actually going through two processes, two steps of information processing, as we say in psychology. Number one, we're affirming goodness, right? We're affirming there's something good in life. We're saying yes to life. My life has some good things in it. Life itself is good in many ways. Doesn't mean that it's perfect, that it's without problems, flaws, but it does mean there are some good things to recognize and to celebrate. So recognition is number two. We recognize that the sources of these good things are outside of ourselves. We don't take credit for them. Right? We say it's other people, it's God, it's forces outside of ourselves are doing things for us that we cannot do for ourselves. And that results in the feeling of gratitude. If we took credit for these things, we might feel pride, right? But we give credit to other people, we recognize the role they had in it, their hand in it. That results in the feeling of gratefulness. So that's affirmation and that's recognition. The recognition is very important because it implies that gratitude is how you think about things, right? And there's an old saying that to be thankful is to be thoughtful. Thinking and thanking go together. You can't be thankful unless you're first thoughtful, right? So recognizing, remembering, recollecting, acknowledging, all those words have to do with the mind and how we think about things make us grateful. Okay? That's where gratitude begins. The question I began my studies with in the late 1990s up at Davis was, does feeling, experiencing, expressing gratitude link to happiness, to well-being? Pete mentioned I'm involved in the positive psychology movement, and I am, and I've been doing that for some time. But even before there was a formal field of positive psychology, there were people studying happiness and well-being and life satisfaction and optimism. It kind of all came together under this umbrella term of positive psychology. But there was people doing this long before, and obviously there was thinkers, theologians, philosophers who pondered the meaning of happiness and well-being and gratefulness as well for thousands of years before that. One question that I asked, putting together my interest in happiness with gratitude, seems like a good connection, right? Or a logical starting point. In fact, that's what happened. I was asked, actually, to become a so-called expert on gratitude. That's how I got interested in it. I was invited to this conference, and there was people who were invited to become the experts on different topics. And Pete was there, and Pete was the expert on humility, and he still is. Okay. But actually, I don't know if you know this or not, but actually I wanted to do humility at that conference. Like that was like my topic, and they took it from me and they gave it to him, right? You see, because I had studied narcissism as a, right, you got it, right? It's the natural flip side, reverse, right? I just reverse everything I knew about narcissism and I would understand humility. Well, it didn't work out that way. It's not quite so easy. But it turned out that what was left over after all the other topics had been assigned was gratitude. It's like, we got nobody to do gratitude. So they said, Emmons, you're going to be the gratitude expert, right? I knew nothing about it. And they said, review all the studies, all the literature on gratitude. Come and tell us about it. Well, it turned out that was easy because there was like 3 studies, right? So I had to go out there and I had to do some studies right away, do some research, because I can't go to this learned conference with all these smart people there and get up there and say, we don't know anything about gratitude, you know? So that started a research project and program for the last 15 years. That's kept me busy. But I began with that question: is expressing gratitude the key to unlocking happiness? Not just expressing, but also feeling internally inside. Expression is just one outward manifestation of it. And what we've discovered through a number of different projects, experimental, survey research, field research, here's a slide which shows you 6 different categories of findings. I put it all on one slide. So there's like 15 years, not just of mine, but other people who have been now become involved in the science of gratitude, finding things like gratitude increases emotional well-being. People feel more joy, happiness, well-being when they are practicing gratitude. Okay? Anywhere between 15 to 25%. These are significant, measurable, quantifiable changes. All right? In the domain of relationships, the second one down the left, grateful people get along better with others. Their relationships are more satisfying, more fulfilling. They feel more connected, less lonely, less isolated than people who are either less grateful or who are not practicing gratitude. Practicing, we'll talk about that. It simply means, for example, keeping a journal where you write down your thoughts and feelings related to gratitude is one kind of practice that you can use to form and develop your gratitude abilities. Grateful people are less depressed. There's a number of studies showing that gratitude can help in the remediation of depression, at least mild forms of depression, mild to moderate forms of depression, and can be very helpful for the prevention of future episodes of depression. Grateful people actually achieve more. There's studies showing they're more goal-oriented and more effective actually accomplishing goals they set for themselves. So the list goes on and on. Grateful people are more generous, giving, forgiving. They pay it forward, as the phrase goes. They actually do that. And all these have been published in pretty reputable journals. Grateful people are more resilient to trauma. They're less likely to show the nasty after effects of traumatic stress if they have gratitude developed prior. So gratitude serves as a form of resilience, part of a person's psychological immunity system. There's lots of other findings than these. There's been studies done with people between the ages of 8 and 80. Journaling studies have been done all over the world. Laboratories have replicated them. They've taken our questionnaires and translated them to different languages, and it's quite fascinating. There's now a huge body of literature which is coalescing and reporting findings like this, and there's actually some others in the domain of Physical health we'll get to, but depression is very interesting. There's some really good studies showing that when people are focusing on what they're grateful for, writing down systematically every day, they say things like this. And I like to show these sorts of things because it reflects what people are noticing it's changing in their lives. They're transforming their emotional states just by focusing outward. When I'm sinking and get caught up in my problems, it helps me rise above them. It helps me get out of the negative, remembers that not all is lost. I stop taking the good in my life for granted and I get out of my shell. It's just a small sampling of the benefits that people report, quite apart from, the way we can quantify those in our numbers, looking at changes in people based upon various exercises that they are engaged in. Okay, physical benefits. This is like the new generation of research on gratitude, showing physical, measurable, quantifiable, actual endpoints, objective endpoints that are being connected and correlated with grateful outcomes. So we're finding that grateful people exercise more. When people keep a gratitude journal, they actually become more active and exercise more. They sleep better. Their sleep is more efficient. They wake up, feel more refreshed in the morning, less bothered by everyday sleep pathology. They're less likely to smoke and abuse alcohol. They're much more likely to adhere to their medication when they go to the doctor. Right? So they take better care of their health in a lot of different ways. They're more likely to engage in health-promoting behaviors, less likely to engage in health-damaging behaviors, all of which are good stuff, right? And the most recent findings are showing links to lower blood pressure, actually measurable 10 to 15% lower, both systolic and diastolic blood pressure, as well as healthier lipid panels. So higher levels of high-density lipoprotein, lower levels of low-density lipoprotein. And there's a couple other findings also of interest related to kidney functioning in creatinine, which is a measure of waste product in the kidneys. Actual studies showing that gratitude relates to less of that, which is good. So that's kind of the new generation looking at really good, important, objective health outcomes. And it's kind of where I think a lot of the research is moving in that direction. So that's exciting to see. We've gone way beyond just kind of, feeling better because you're keeping a gratitude journal to actually measurable health-related outcomes. Okay. Now, I was thinking about what I wanted to present to you tonight. And normally what I do, and when I give a presentation, is I kind of do that sort of thing, go through all the benefits of gratitude, and we talk about then how to practice it and get more of it, and so on, explain why it works, and that's the entire presentation. But I thought I want to do something a little bit different this evening that represents kind of just some new thoughts and ideas that I have, which at the same time is a way of kind of putting together the various findings about gratitude into a more or less coherent structure or framework, or maybe it'll be incoherent, I don't know. But hopefully there's something in between. I think it's just a different way of thinking about gratitude. And I think the idea has some validity to it, just because of the in academia, there's a lot of ways to get feedback. There's a lot of people who want to critique our work, aren't there, right? So, when you're a student, professors critique you, whether you're undergraduate or graduate student, okay? When you're a professor, journal editors and reviewers critique you, right? And then your university, when you go up for reviews and tenure, that sort of thing, they critique you, right? And so on. Grant panels critique your applications when you want to get money to do research. So there's a lot of people who are critiquing us that we could rely on to get a, affirmation of what we're doing is useful or not. Okay. Well, all those are important, and I've relied on those from time to time. But now I prefer instead to look at how many likes I get on Facebook. When I put out a new idea, okay, I know it has validity if people say, yeah, that's a good idea, right? Because that's, you just kind of change after a while in terms of the people you think have opinion that's worthwhile, and they're just regular folks, right? So I posted these ideas in a very abbreviated form of it, and I got more likes than anything I ever published or posted, and I don't post a whole lot, but I thought, hey, maybe I'm onto something here, But then, what happened was that I posted a picture of my wife on our anniversary, And that, it so eclipsed this one. I mean, it wasn't even close, right? So, you learn a lot after you do that for a while, how to get, you put your kids in there with your dog, or I just put my wife by herself, and I get like 100 likes, and I only have 80 friends on Facebook. I get one, so it's kind of weird. But so this was number 2 most popular things. I'm thinking maybe there's some good ideas behind it. Anyway. You can decide yourselves. But I was reading about a man who started this trend some years ago where he would carry around a stone. It's called the gratitude stone. He would carry a stone in his pocket. And he would use this stone to remind himself all those things in his life for which he was grateful when he would get forgetful, as we do, or take these things for granted. Well, if you get a stone in your pocket, it's hard to ignore. Right? Like a pebble in your shoe. It's always there. And he would pull it out and it would remind him of those things he would be grateful for. So start thinking about stones and how we build structures and foundations based on stones. We have like the ground stone, the cornerstone, foundational stone, and a capstone on the top and so forth. And you have a structure. So I started thinking about gratitude in terms of 3 stones. 3 foundational stones, which link together and tie together different aspects of gratitude. And I think these become important when we think about how to practice gratitude, how to achieve more and more gratitude. So if gratitude is our structure, then these 3 stones are ways to achieve a solid gratitude structure, a stable foundation for gratitude. So what does gratitude require then from this perspective? Okay, and the first thing that it requires, again, is this looking for the good or seeing the good. That's where gratitude begins, right? We affirm the good. We look for things to say yes to about life. Seeing, noticing, seeing with grateful eyes, right? So when we have our eyes wide open in gratitude, we're much more likely to look for and to see the good. So the terms I used before, things like recognizing and becoming aware of and acknowledging, are all ways of seeing, or aspects of looking at life. Okay, what is the stone? Now, for each of these aspects or 3 components, there's a particular term I'm going to use that captures the essence of each one of these. And I think the first one, for looking for the good or seeing the good, is the stone of joy. Okay, now joy is a very interesting concept. We can think about it as perhaps one of the key foundations of gratitude. Karl Barth, the theologian, he said that joy is the simplest form of gratitude. Kind of interesting, right? Joy. Gratitude is something it's a celebration, right, of those things in your life that provide joy, a sense of joy, a sense of well-being, not necessarily happiness, which is different. In fact, gratitude being the gateway of joy is in contrast to happiness. Now, we kind of live in an age of happiness where, it's a huge industry, programs and workshops and books and seminars on happiness, right? There's no shortage of advice out there promising, if you follow my formula or my prescription, you can become happier in 30 days or 3 hours or 10 steps or 7 secrets, right? It's all around us. All the books that have the word happiness in the title, or popular media like Time Magazine every once in a while, every so often does, happiness issue, and they're just one illustration of that. You know how many titles there are on Amazon that have the word happiness in them? A lot? Yeah, you're right, a lot. Yeah, a lot, yeah. 36,683. Well, that was in January. It's probably more than that now. Not all those are books, but, a lot of them are books. I mean, there's probably, scarves and things and stuff, too, that has to do with happiness, but bracelets, right, and so on. But a lot of them are books. So it's a lot of stuff out, a lot of advice, a lot of voices telling us how to be happy. But I'm not so sure it's the same thing as joy, though. I think joy might be a little bit different than happiness. I don't know. Some of you are nodding your head and so on. I think most psychologists would see these very similar, but I think if we can analyze from a different angle, perhaps more of a spiritual one, we could see there's some differences between joy and happiness. For example, I just jotted down a few ideas that I had, that in terms of how these are typically thought of, there's some consensus that happiness tends to be more external, based on what's happening in a person's life, right? Good things happening, happiness. Bad things happening, unhappiness, okay? And so on. Whereas joy, there's more of kind of an internal feeling that can be independent of happenings. Happiness is more short-term, momentary, as an emotion. You feel happy right now, you might not feel happy tomorrow. Joy can be more long-term or dispositional, right? Again, partly because it's independent of circumstances. Joy tends to be more other-focused, more relational in nature. George Valiant is a well-known psychiatrist who studies human development and also the emotions, and he says joy is fundamentally relational, and he's right, it occurs in a context of relationships. Happiness may or may not, may be more about us than about other people. And then lastly, joy can be felt in what we think of as unhappy circumstances, ones which you wouldn't necessarily associate with joy or happiness. You could be joyful at a funeral, for example. Memorial service is a good example. My mom died last summer and went back east and saw relatives and people I hadn't seen in decades. And it's not a happy occasion, but it kind of is in a sense, because you're connecting, coming together again to celebrate the life of someone. You've all had that experience before. John McCain, when he was in the prisoner of war camps in Vietnam, afterward he was interviewed, and he talked about how he felt joy in those circumstances. You know, how could you feel joy, in prison like that? But he did. He said many times he felt joyful. So we can have joy. I think for these reasons, maybe others, that it's different. I don't know. There needs to be research on that topic. But I think that at least there's some evidence and good reason to think of it connected to gratitude. We see gratitude affects people's ratings of joy more so than it does their ratings of happiness. So that's interesting. Joy and gratitude just seem to go together. Now, by the way, let's go back to that first one. Looking for the good also involves looking for the bad in the good as well. Maybe that's where joy comes in. So I've done some writing on that, kind of the juxtaposition between suffering and joy, or adversity and delight, to quote Harvey Cox, the Harvard theologian, talks about this juxtaposition between adversity and delight. And that's where gratitude really comes together, where you have the awareness of past suffering, but now you have the current celebration. And it's only in that contrast, that context, that you can really celebrate those good things, really affirm that goodness. So looking for the good includes looking for the good in the bad, kind of a redemptive twist on something that is bad. All right, so that would be joy, the first of the stones, okay? Now, not only have to look at the good or look for the good, but then take in the good, kind of absorb it or savor it. I say this is receiving the good or taking, because there could be a lot of good out there, but it just kind of goes over us. We don't really notice it or take it in or relish it, right? So we need a second stone, right? We're taking in the goodness. And I'm going to call this one grace. I think grace is the appropriate term and concept to refer to this element of gratitude, which is experiencing that gift, right? Acknowledging that this gift, I didn't work for it, earn it, or deserve it, or merit it, but it's mine nevertheless, okay? See, without that awareness, we have the good, but we don't take it in. Now, one of the things that I think most of it has observation too, is that people are pretty good at giving gifts, but not so good at receiving gifts. Are you like that? I'm like that. So I like giving gifts. I like to see the response and reaction it has when I know it's something that they really wanted. My wife got so excited because I got her this pair of boots for Christmas, and she had no clue she was going to get it. So she had the surprise, which elevates, emotion anyway. She was so excited, more so than our kids, when they got presents when they were small, right? And she's like, how did you know? And I worked hard at it to find those. It's really kind of funny. I have to take some time to tell you, because I was on a trip, and I knew what kind she wanted. I had an idea, and I saw a woman in the airport with a pair of boots. I thought, that's kind of the right style. Now, how do you go up to a stranger without making it sound like, you're kind of, trying to pick them up or something, right? It's that kind of, those boots are kind of cool, right? So I waited like a long time, like I'm like watching her because there's time before the flight, and she's in Starbucks. I gotta say something because it's November. I gotta order these boots, right? So I work up the nerve and the courage to do so, and then she tells me the name of them. She couldn't quite remember the brand name, but then I look it up right then on on Amazon, and I look, it's like $600 boots. It's like wow, no. And then when we got on the plane. She's already seated because she's like, in the priority seating, right? She's afforded those boots. She's, got a lot of money, right? So she didn't think I was weird or anything. I mean, I just said, and she told me about it. And I said, okay, I looked them up. I said, and they're very expensive. And she said, well, they're worth it, is what she said. So I got a pair. They weren't quite that much. That was a good discount. But anyway, what was the point of the story? Surprise, right? She was surprised by it. She, I can't remember the point of the story. Receiving gifts. Oh yeah, thank you. So it's nice to see that. Now, if I got a gift that was that expensive, I would be worried. How much did you spend on it? I didn't need that, right? That sort of thing. Isn't that often our response? So we rather give than, so we've got to be good receivers, practice good receiving, and that's where maybe grace comes in. Looking for the good, taking in the good is number 2. All right, second stone. Grace amplifies the good in gratitude. One of the ways our mind works is that good things, when we get them, don't last very long. They wear off. Our emotional system likes newness. It likes novelty. So how do we keep that newness going? Okay, we have to find some way to amplify or magnify, because our brains are pretty good at doing the opposite. We magnify and amplify the negative. Negativity is much stronger than positivity. Complaint is stronger than compliment. Well, we have to have another system in there to offset this natural bias toward negativity, and that's where gratitude comes in. So magnifying, like magnifying words, print, or sound. Amplifier pumps up the volume, right? Pumps up the print so you can see it. Pumps up the goodness in our life is what gratitude does, and what grace does, amplifies the goodness that produces gratitude. So that's number 2. Now, anything solid, got to have 3 legs, or 4 legs if it's a chair. If it's a stool, it's got to have 3 legs, right? 2 doesn't get you too far. So we need a third stone. And the third stone, I'm going to say, is giving back the good. And the concept associated with that one is love. Right? So we got joy, we got grace, and we got love. So we look for the good is the first step. You can not just look for the good, take in the good, which is grace, right? But then the gratitude is not complete until it's given back. And that's when the gratitude becomes thanksgiving. When the giving becomes thanksgiving, you give it back, right? Giving back the good. That's the next step in this process. And it is the case that out of gratitude comes this desire to give back the goodness in some measure to which it's been received. And it's quite fascinating that grateful people are more likely to give back, to become more generous, right? To return, to reciprocate that goodness that they've received. So I think there's reasons to put that there as the third stone. There does seem to be a connection between grace, gratitude, generosity. So much of life is about giving and receiving benefits, repaying benefits, right? And it seems like love would be that component that would be involved there in the third stone.